So, in this segment, we're going to be talking about how the tiers that different areas are put into are based in politics and economics and potentially not science. So, I found this article. It's from the Mail, so Daily Mail. So, pinch of salt, as always, and also the formatting on the Mail website is terrible. Like, I don't know who made this article, but yeah, not great. So, Michael Gove told 500,000. Sorry, it's from the Mail on Sunday, which are slightly better than the Daily Mail. So, Michael Gove was told 500,000 could lose jobs if he got his wish and London went into a tier three. So, if we go to the main bit here, and it's really difficult to figure out what's going on in this article, honestly, but the framing in this is phenomenal as well. So, leading the charge for shutdown was Michael Gove, who was grown into such an evangelist for crippling lockdowns that some of his more conspiratorially minded colleagues even wonder if the ambitious cabinet minister is trying to dynamite Miss Johnson's government from within. So imagine this, right? This would be a rerun of the when was it? When the last time they had leadership elections, where Michael Gove is going to try and stab Boris in the back, cripple London through going for going for a tier three lockdown, and then how popular is he going to be amongst Conservatives in the next leadership election? He's not going to be popular. This framing is stupid. If Conservatives are very much against this lockdown for multiple reasons, but if you think Michael Gove is going to use a tier three lockdown to help his leadership chances, then sorry, that's not what's going to happen here. Very naive of whoever wrote this. There's some interesting stuff in this article. So Mr. Johnson looked askance, I don't know what that means, one source said, as Mr. Gove called for London to be subject to a more severe tier 3 restriction despite the savage impact it would have on the capital's economy. Well, what about Manchester's economy? If we're going to make this on economic grounds, no one should be in tier 3. But we're not doing this for economic grounds, we're doing this for health reasons. Michael didn't bunk about much, said the source. He referred to the pressure on wards in areas such as Redbridge, which is something I find slightly strange, and said, we need tier 3 for the whole of London. Without doubt, we want to save lives. You don't really care about people though, do you, Michael? Do you? So Mr. Gove's pro-lockdown polemic came despite a government briefing note prepared for the meeting, which projected the possible loss of 550,000 jobs if London was put into a tier 3 compared to a tier 2 lockdown. I mean, if that's the case, then what that means is a massive lack of business support for businesses in order to support them through these lockdowns. If you're thinking you're going to lose that many jobs in London, most likely be service jobs, you need to up your business support massively. In order to help the businesses through this lockdown and through this pandemic, which this government has exacerbated. And so I found it very interesting that Michael Gove mentioned Redbridge specifically. Redbridge does have a Conservative MP and a Labour MP. It could be because it was a very narrowly narrowly kept by the Conservatives. This should be, yes, the 2019 election. So, Ian Duncan Smith lost a bit of support, but he still won. Not the most comfortable win. He won by, just over 1,000 votes. So, yeah, I found it interesting. Maybe he's scared because the Lib Dems got a bit of a bump as well. But it's very strange he mentioned Redbridge by name, because Redbridge has a lot of cases per 100,000 people, but there was Havering, which has more people. So it's very strange he mentioned Redbridge by name. I found that a bit weird. But what we found out is the tier list. Michael Gove in part confirming that the tier list, what tier your area in is not just based on the coronavirus, but it's based around ministers. So what ministers decide. So what they said was, they decide based on the following factors: case detection rates in all age groups, and in particular among the over 60s, how quickly case rates are rising or falling, positivity in the general population. I don't even know what that means. So how the population will take the lockdown. Maybe that's what it means, or maybe how COVID positive the population is. That's very strange, the wording here. Pressure on the NHS, including current and projected 3 to 4 week out NHS capacity, which is another issue because some of the not the algorithms, but the predictions that they made have been flawed, which is something the government got pulled up on a few weeks ago, including admissions, general acute ICU bed occupancy, staff absences, local context, and exceptional circumstances such as local but contained outbreak. So it's very strange. This stuff obviously is important, but at the same time we know it's based around economics because they were concerned about jobs here, which that's a good concern. But if you want to keep these jobs and these businesses open, you need to give financial support to the businesses because as a lot of people point out here, if you furlough staff and there's no business for them to get back to after March, they're most likely going to be unemployed. So there's that. I did also find some other interesting stuff out. If we go back here, London potentially will go into a tier 3 lockdown because if you look, percentage increases aren't the most useful thing in the world because it doesn't tell you, how much, how many cases they actually had. It tells you how big the change is, but it doesn't tell you how big the changes are from what. So we can see here the southeast London and the east of England rising by around 20%, and the northeast, falling by about 40%, and that's potentially in part due to them having such high numbers originally. And if we look at hospitalisation rates in the northwest. Oh, is that the one we're looking at? Yeah, northwest. You can see how high the hospitalisation rates are. Around the middle, around beginning of November. But Northeast Yorkshire, being extremely high, the Midlands being extremely high, London, being a much lower number. But because the cases are rising in London, it does raise the question that will London go into a tier 3 lockdown if the COVID numbers get worse? Because if we go back down. The fact that it's done in these sorts of boroughs and stuff like that, it makes it very hard to understand, where London begins and ends, considering that I'm not from London. I have no idea. But we can see from some of these orange areas, their case rates are quite high in some of these places and very low in others. Lewisham, very low. Elmbridge, that sounds funny. How's Elephant and Castle doing? Who cares? Anyways, but what we can tell from this is London isn't doing the best. There's a lot of kind of that yellowy brown colour around London, and the reason why London wasn't putting into a tier 3 lockdown was over jobs. And so what we can see from this is these lockdowns are very political. So the question we need to ask ourselves is that are these counties being put in the right tier list, or are the government making political decisions? So if we scroll around, we should see there's Birmingham there, so we should see my area, Northampton somewhere. Northampton being here, 204 cases. But the other, the surrounding area doing quite well. It does raise the question that will more of these areas go into a lockdown, and also the fact that some of these areas here, I think it's around Kent, some of the areas are red and some of them are blue and yellow, and they've gone into lockdown. So this kind of blanket approach, it doesn't work. But one of the justifications one of the scientists puts out is say if you live say here and you had a tier 3 lockdown and here you had a tier 2 lockdown, you can literally just go over here and do whatever despite your area being very COVID positive. But I think I'm starting to ramble a bit now, but the main takeaway from this video is I want people to realise that perhaps, and I don't want to be one of those all COVID skeptics is a scam, because obviously I don't believe that. What I do believe is that the tiers that the government is forcing places into is based potentially around economics over the science, and that without giving the right business support to places, the government are going to keep certain areas out of a tier 3 lockdown in order to kind of keep their support in sort of conservative heartlands. But the Redbridge point, I still don't understand why he singled out Redbridge. It's very strange. It's very strange indeed. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.